It started with a scream that no one else seemed to hear. A sharp, panicked cry that echoed through the dim, animatronic-lit dining room of Chuck E. Cheese, half drowned by the tinny jingle of the prize machine and the dull thump of a birthday song on loop. I was 17, working the night shift for extra cash, and I'd already learned to ignore the weird stuff. Games booting up on their own, tokens rolling across the floor when no one was near, Chuck E.'s eyes shifting just a little too late when a kid walked by. But that scream pierced something deeper, something primal, and I knew it wasn't a joke. The manager, Carla, waved it off like always, muttering something about old wiring and cheap speakers, as she counted the drawer with a tension she tried to hide, but there was something in her eyes, something haunted, like she knew exactly what that sound was. I started noticing more after that. Security footage that glitched every night at 3:13 a.m. sharp, birthday names written on the party board that didn't match any scheduled guests, and the animatronics twitching like they were waking up from a long, resentful nap. And the more I saw, the less the staff would talk, until the janitor, a quiet guy named Ray, grabbed my arm one night and whispered, "They only come when someone sees them," then refused to say another word, even after he was found 2 days later locked in the prize closet, eyes wide open and mouth stuffed with tickets. I tried to quit. I really did. But every time I walked out, something would draw me back. A flat tire, a lost phone, a call from Carla saying they were short-staffed. And every night the place felt colder, darker, more alive, like it was waiting for something. One night I stayed late to shut down the power manually because the breakers had tripped again, and when I stepped into the control room, I found the monitor playing live footage of the dining area. Only the chairs were all turned toward the stage, the lights flickering above them like candles at a vigil. And Chuck E. was gone. Not just off, but physically missing, wires dangling from his empty spot. Then the screen flashed static, and a single frame appeared. A kid's birthday photo from years ago, the kind we hang near the kitchen, only in the picture. I was standing behind the child, smiling, even though I hadn't started working there yet. And just as the lights cut out and I felt breath on the back of my neck, the power snapped back and everything was normal again, except the photo was gone and the stage was empty. And now, every night at 3:13, I get a call from the store's number, even though the building's been shut down for months. They say kids make up stories all the time, but I know what I saw that night inside the Chuck E. Cheese on Lincoln Avenue. The one that shut down in 2012 after the fire no one ever talks about. I was 8. It was my cousin Tyler's birthday, and I remember everything being just a little off. The lights dimmer than usual, the carpet soaked with some sticky film that smelled like melted plastic, and the costumed characters refusing to blink when we waved at them. No one believed me when I said the Chuck E. mascot wasn't the usual guy. It was taller, thinner, its limbs bending wrong like the costume didn't quite fit, and when it leaned down to whisper something in Tyler's ear, he turned pale and wouldn't talk for the rest of the night. Later, while the adults were chatting and the other kids were in the ball pit, Tyler asked me to go with him behind the stage, where he said Chuck E. told him the secret game was hidden, and we snuck through the maintenance door no one was supposed to open. Behind the animatronics was a hallway lined with old parts, disassembled arms and heads of retired characters, and a faint melody coming from a dusty cassette player sitting on a folding chair, looping a lullaby I've never heard before or since. At the end of the hall, there was a door marked Party Room C, even though the map only showed A and B, and Tyler, like he was in a trance, said he needed to go in alone to win, so he did. And the second the door shut behind him, the lights cut out, the cassette clicked off, and all I could hear was this horrible grinding sound, like gears chewing through something soft, followed by a wet thud that made my stomach flip. I screamed for help, banged on the door, but when a staff member finally found me, the hallway was gone. No door, no parts, just a wall of bolted drywall and wires, like it had never existed. They found Tyler hiding in the crawl space near the freezer, shivering, eyes rolled back, whispering, "He's not done playing," and he hasn't spoken a word since, not to his parents, not to doctors, not even to me. And now, more than a decade later, I still get postcards on my birthday, each one showing a different Chuck E. Cheese location I've never been to, with a single sentence scrawled in crooked handwriting on the back. Party Room C is ready again. Bring more players. It was supposed to be just a harmless nostalgia trip. Me and my two best friends, Jamie and Mark, all in our late 20s now, decided to revisit the Chuck E. Cheese where we practically lived as kids. The one out in Rosewood that had been shut down for over a decade but recently reopened under new ownership with a retro revival theme. At first it was almost fun in that creepy, ironic way. Faded decor, sticky floors that hadn't changed since the 90s, even the same animatronics on the stage, though they looked more worn, with sun-faded fur and blinking eyes that didn't quite sync. But almost immediately, things started feeling wrong in a way none of us could quite explain, like the air was thicker than it should be, and the arcade machines made strange, low-frequency hums that seemed to mess with your balance if you stood too close. The place was nearly empty. Just a tired mom with her toddler, two teenage employees, and a manager who watched us with this hollow stare, like she didn't blink unless she had to. Jamie swore she saw her mouth something when we walked in, but none of us caught what it was. We tried to ignore the weird vibe and play a few games, laughing nervously and making jokes to keep it light. But when we went into the old Tunnels of Fun play area, recently reopened and rebuilt with the same dark plastic crawl spaces we remembered, we noticed something new. A door tucked at the far end behind a curtain, labeled Show Control, authorized staff only, but it was cracked open just enough to invite curiosity. Mark, ever the explorer, couldn't resist and slipped inside while we kept watch. But 5 minutes passed, then 10, and he didn't come back. When I called out for him, I heard something respond that wasn't his voice, just this low, dragging sound like something being pulled across tile, followed by faint music, the kind you'd hear at the end of an old VHS tape when the credits roll in an empty theater. We finally went in after him, and the room was massive, too big to fit inside the building as we knew it, with rows of deactivated animatronics lined up like statues, their eyes following us through their heads never moved. And in the center of the room was a strange circle of light where the floor was missing, just a deep black pit with wires hanging down into it like roots. Then we saw Mark standing at the edge, completely still, staring down. And when we reached for him, he turned slowly and whispered, "He wants all of us now," in a voice that wasn't his. It was deeper, hollow, layered like multiple voices speaking through him. The lights went out for a second, just 1 second. But when they came back on, Mark was gone. No pit, no animatronics, just an empty room filled with the echo of a child's laughter that wasn't ours. The staff claimed they never saw us go in, said the play area was closed for maintenance, and when we showed them our phone footage, the videos had corrupted, just static and occasional frames of us staring blankly at something off-screen. Jamie hasn't been the same since. She wakes up every night at 2:41 a.m., gasping for air, claiming she hears the prize wheel spinning in the next room. And last week she mailed me a photo with no return address. It was taken inside the show control room, with Mark standing in the center, only now he was wearing a Chuck E. Cheese costume, full suit, oversized head and all. But the eyes weren't plastic anymore. They were his, bloodshot and pleading, and taped to the back was a crumpled prize ticket with one phrase scribbled in red ink. "You never really leave the game, you just stop knowing you're playing."